Hello, and welcome to Influential Thursday on the Joan Henry Show. I'm your host, Jamaican Joan, and I'm super excited to be here another Thursday evening with you guys. So while I wait for a few more folks to join us tonight, I will just wait, right? Because we have the amazing Jamila Woods who is my guest for tonight. And I want to wait for you to come on live so that you can just flood the timeline with nothing but loves. You all know I don't do likes. I simply do loves. So we're gonna wait a few minutes. And in the meantime, though, I would like to use this opportunity to ask you to go to YouTube and not like, but subscribe to Influential Thursday because, of course, it's a brand new channel as of last week, and I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers before the end of February. So see, I'm putting on the pressure. You all gotta get over there and just type in Influential Thursday and subscribe. Another announcement is if you know someone, whether it's yourself or someone that you might know, who are looking to get some household items or maybe some kids' clothing, please let me know. And the RISA organization, which is my organization, can put you in touch with folks who can make that happen. So I need you to visit my website and follow me. The website is risawomen.org. And of course, I'm going to type that information in the feed once I'm done. Again, so follow us, RISA organization. Also, RISA organization has been for the past couple of months hosting a monthly workshop on relationship building. And it's relationship in all sense of the word. It's like several handles on relationship, whether it's relationship as it relates to your spouse, your finances, your health, so we have great sessions the fourth Saturday of every month. And so if you would like to be a part of that group, you can inbox me or you could drop your information in the feed and we will take it from there, providing you location and time and everything. So while I wait for a few more folks to join in, because see, we have an amazing guest tonight, so we want to make sure that she receive all the loves. Again, Jamaican Joan like all the loves, not the likes, okay? And so tonight's influential quote, it says, "Don't let your struggle become your identity."
Mama.
Again, tonight's influential quote says, "Don't let your struggle become your identity." And as we move through with tonight's broadcast, you will understand why my chosen quote for tonight was just that. So, ladies and gentlemen of Influential Thursday, thank you again for joining in, for watching live. And let me also thank those who will be watching the replay. This is a program that get over last week, just starting from 2020. I've done 2 shows so far. The 1 week before last, we had almost 500 viewers. The one before that, my very first of 2020, had over 1,000 viewers. So,
Awesome.
we go big on the Joan Henry Show, right? So tonight featured guest is none other than Jamila Woods. And I have to kind of hold my tongue not to say, because I've been giving her an additional name. I don't know why I keep every time, I just want to say Dr. Jamila Wood. I don't know why, but that's all. But so anyway, we're going to go with Jamila Wood. She's holding me against what I really want to say, but I'm going to respect and just say Jamila Wood. So Jamila Wood, welcome to the Joan Henry Show tonight.
Wow, thank you so much.
And so to kick things off, can you just tell us who is Jamila Woods?
Yes, ma'am. How are you? And thank you so much, Joan, for this phenomenal opportunity to be on the Joan Henry Show with Jamaican Joan. I love it. And I look forward to checking you out and subscribing and all of that. I'm really excited. I am Jamila Woods. I am Reverend, so I'm not doctor, but I'm Reverend. But
Okay.
I said to you that it's interesting because people constantly call me doctor. And I remember on a program I was on not too long ago where they actually had a bunch of political elected officials on the program. The woman was so discouraged. She was like, but can I just say doctor? I said, no, no, you can say Reverend or you can just say Jamila. I said, but don't call me doctor because, you know, y'all think that sounds good. I said, but other folk will be like, she lying about who she is. However, Jamaican Joan, I will say this to you, that perhaps all of you are saying something prophetic because I can't tell you how many people call me doctor and I just don't get it. Constantly call me doctor. So maybe you all are speaking a word that I am resisting and running from, and you know, we'll have to see about that. But anyway, I am Jamila Woods, and I am, you know, I'm a pastor of a church, but my heart and my drive and my life's goals have been working with people. And so I do a great deal of work around mental health. Mental health is what I believe is my call. So I am a licensed social worker. I am a certified mental health first aid instructor. I'm a certified domestic violence assessor and domestic violence counselor. I'm a certified anger management specialist. And I just have a heart and a mind for people. I do a great deal of social justice work. So I'm also a social justice advocate, have been a member of multiple social justice organizations. I actually served as the vice chair of the African American Leadership Commission in Chicago. And for those who don't know, the African American Leadership Commission is a part of the Gamaliel Foundation. And the Gamaliel Foundation is where Barack Obama received his community outreach. And I can't believe I can't call it right now. But that's where he received his training to do his community service work and community advocacy. And so I was a part of that organization for years, Gamaliel Foundation, still very much connected to them. And so that's who I am. You know, my life's goal, my life's drive, Joan, has always been about people, working with people, looking for ways to help enhance and enrich the lives of people, serving as an advocate for people. One of the biggest and newest goals that I'm actually working on now in Prince George's County is open up what we call a recovery cafe. And a recovery cafe is where people come who have been dealing with homelessness, who have been dealing with reentry into the community, who've been dealing with addictions and mental health challenges. We bring them together literally in a cafe style setting, but all of the resources and things that they need are in that setting where they can talk to people about job readiness. They learn leadership skills. They actually learn leadership skills. They get support for homelessness. They get support for employment. They get support for addictions. And so that is a project, that is the newest project that we've started. My organization, by the way, is called Gabriel's Lyric Therapeutic Services. And I am so honored and thrilled that the organization is actually named after my children, Gabriel and Lyric, yes. And so we also do an annual Faith and Mental Health Conference, which is a big thing. And I hope you'll be able to join us this year. We bring members from the faith community. We bring members from the community. We bring elected officials. We bring families and individuals and churches together to talk about this really serious crisis related to mental health. And that serious crisis, Joan, is related across all of our spectrums. The geographical boundaries are unbelievable. Because we know it's not just an issue that we're dealing with in these United States, but all in multiple different countries. And so I do an annual Faith and Mental Health Conference. I am so excited, Joan, because this is year number 5.
Wow,
and
awesome.
Yes, so this is a milestone for us, and we're planning on bringing no fewer than 500 people together. I told my folk I'd love to see 1,000, but no fewer than 500 people together to continue this conversation and this ongoing work. So we do work in the community. I do certification trainings all year round, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and the mental health first aid certification so that people will really understand it. So I want to say again, I just thank you for thinking of me and providing this opportunity to come and share with your audience, because I believe that, you know, Joan, I'm looking at your beautiful backdrop. I'm looking at your beautiful jewelry, and I'm looking at your beautiful outfit, and I'm looking at your glasses. And here's the thing, Joan, everything that we do begins with a thought.
Yes.
You know, you thought about what you wanted your set to look like. You thought about the presentation that you wanted to make to your audience. You thought about having a radio show, and people pay a lot more attention sometimes to the physical things and to our bodies, and even what we put in our bodies, what we eat. But the thing that drives everything we do starts in our mind.
Yeah, all about the mindset.
All about the mindset. And that is the place, unfortunately, where we don't spend as much attention, as much detail to, you know, stopping sometimes to just think about what we're thinking about.
Right.
Right? Because that drives everything that we do. And so that's where my heart and my mind and my desire are.
Awesome. And, you know, that's definitely what this the Influential Thursday is all about, is about educating and inspiring others, you know. So every week I try to bring on somebody who I know will do just that, you know. So I know that you wear many hats. So tonight we're kind of pitching our tent on mental health, right?
Absolutely.
So for my viewers, tell us, what is mental health first aid and why is it so important?
Yes, absolutely. And so, Joan, thank you again. You know, everybody knows about CPR, and everybody knows about first aid. And I hope that we all understand how significantly important it is to have CPR and to have first aid. What a lot of people don't know, Joan, is that there is mental health first aid. And not only is there mental health first aid, but statistics show that you have an 80% higher chance of using mental health first aid than you do CPR and first aid. So the question is, what is mental health first aid? Mental health first aid is the first aid that you show to a person who's having either engaged in a full-fledged or entering into a mental health or even a substance-induced crisis. And just like CPR, mental health first aid teaches people who are average lay people, people who are not doctors or nurses or have specific training, but it teaches you life-saving techniques to assist someone. And just like CPR, you don't have to have a medical background to know how to save a life. But you do have to understand that there are limitations. And so the limitations that you have, however, can change, can save your life, can save an individual's life, can save a group of individuals' lives, right? And you exercise that mental health first aid until the professionals come along. So we don't teach people to become therapists. We don't teach people to become counselors. We teach them in the same way they're taught in CPR, how to perform initial life-saving acts. In other words, you have to know how to talk to a person.
Right.
You have to know how to engage a person who's having a mental health crisis. Unfortunately, you know, we hear people today always talking about police officers, and you say these police officers are shooting people that have mental health trouble. They're shooting first and asking questions later. And you know what? I understand the anger and frustration behind that. But what we need to do as a people is get behind the fact that police officers are trained to protect people from hurting other people or breaking the law. Right? They're not trained in mental health first aid. They're not trained in mental health attributes. And we need to fight to make sure anybody that has to deal with people in a public setting has the understanding and the training and the background. You know, in some jobs, they require you to have CPR to work those jobs, Joan. We need to make sure that public officials like police officers, even judges and attorneys and people who make decisions, school teachers and bus drivers, people who make decisions about people's lives, have an idea or understand the difference between a person who's just being unruly and aggressive and someone who may have a mental health challenge that doesn't know what to do or how to get out of the dysregulation or the dysfunction that they're experiencing.
And you know what, Jamela, I can identify on so many levels with what you're saying. For one, I'm a certified first aid CPR instructor with American Red Cross. I do that religiously. I could teach CPR in my sleep. So I understand that aspect. I was also, out of curiosity, I took the class for mental health first aid.
And you didn't take it from me? I'm hurt.
But you know what? At the time, I just learned about it and I was just curious, and it was being
Mhm,
given in Virginia by their Virginia government.
mhm.
I just signed up for it because anybody know Joan, I'm a very curious person.
That's a good
I
thing.
stay learning. It's like I'm
Mhm.
glutton for, I'm just always in a learning mode.
That's
So,
awesome.
okay, let me go see what that is about because I really wanted to know, because if you don't know, then you just don't know, you
Right.
know? And I always like to know a lot so that I could help to educate people.
Amen.
On the other hand, so now I have both CPR, first aid, on both hands. I also happen to be working with folks with intellectual disabilities.
Okay.
And I don't want to sound like the Methuselah of human services, but it's coming up almost 30 years that I have
Wow.
been in this industry. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
I currently am the director for a day support program in Virginia, where
Wow.
my group, I have about, let me see, I have 46 individuals in my program. So
Wow.
I cannot tell you how important it is for people to understand and know about the population, because
Yes,
what they may see as being unruly or whatever, it's just the person's way of communicating.
that's right.
So it is very important for folks to understand. I've seen many a times, not with people from my program, but just being out in the community,
Mhm.
how other citizens or even law enforcement folks would treat people with intellectual disabilities.
Yes.
Now, I'm hoping it's simply because they do not know, because that is just wrong on all levels.
Yeah.
And I have a special love for that population. And people would ask me, why are you so committed to the population? Oftentimes people would say, well, for the most part, well, I have a sister, I have a brother, I have this person with, I don't have that kind of story. Mine is just coming from a place of servant leadership. I have searched my families on both sides, and I don't have anyone that is at least not diagnosed. Now, they
Right.
may
That
be
you know
found,
of.
but the
They're there.
diagnosis,
Can I tell you they're there?
I do not have any that the diagnosed that are
Uh,
diagnosed with it, but I have a special love for the population, and I am very protective every chance I get. If you really want to see Jamaican Joan get out of character, just say something about the people I serve, because
wow.
I know that our folks, they just need guidance, they just need love. So I'm very, very protective of people, whether it's intellectual disability or any other sort of mental health. So again, see how I can really identify with some of what you said on my own terms, stuff that I know of
Yes.
personally,
Yes.
not that I read about in a book, but things that I've personally grown to, know about the population. So in your words, what are some types of mental health?
As it relates to mental health challenges.
Yes.
So, as it relates to adults,
Mhm.
the largest population of mental health challenges in adults are anxiety disorders.
Okay.
It's so interesting because whenever I teach classes and I ask people, what do you think impacts adults the most? People say things like bipolar disorder, and they'll say things like schizophrenia, but it's actually anxiety disorder
Mhm.
is the hugest disorder that a lot of adults deal with. With our young people, it's more the depression. We see a lot more issues with depression. We see anxiety also, but you have so many things. You have post-traumatic stress disorder. You have, we're at a time when people deal with what we call seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And that seasonal affective disorder is a disorder that occurs when people get depressed during a certain time of year. And the winter months, the fall and winter months are when you have most people who are impacted by SAD, or seasonal affective disorder. Like we said, we have bipolar, you have schizophrenia. There are so many, there are probably more disorders than I can actually
Wow.
mention. But again, the thing that people believe to be most familiar with are people who deal with bipolar disorder. And we have things like, we use terms like manic, when people are just, seem to be all over the place, and and then you can have depressive symptoms. So you can have many different types of disorders. You can have more than one disorder occurring at a time. You have a lot of people who deal with things like panic disorders. What I want to say the most, though, Joan, is I don't like to just call out, oh, you can have these disorders, because I always tell people there's only one health, right? And there's a great deal of stigma and shame related to mental health because people have somewhere and somehow disconnected mental health from health. There's only one health, and that one health has multiple components. As it relates to mental health, a lot of people, I frequently ask when I'm in sessions and in workshops, I'll say, how many people in here have suffered from a mental health disorder? And a lot of times, Joan, one or two people raise their hand. And I say, that's where the problem begins, because the reality is everybody in the room has had a mental health disorder. A mental health disorder is no different than a physical health disorder. All of us have physical disorders in that we catch colds. It can be simple things. We catch colds, we get viruses, we get a sore throat, a sore tooth, or you understand what I'm saying, or a hurt foot. We all deal with physical challenges. Somehow, and I don't know when this started or why it started, but somehow there's this mentality that the same doesn't occur with your mental health, when it absolutely does. And it absolutely occurs with everybody who lives and breathes and moves. I also ask in rooms, how many people have ever had stress? And without fail, the majority of people in the room raise their hand. And I say, once again, you're all wrong. We've all been stressed, right? All of us go through stress. And then people are like, yeah, I guess you're right. And I say, how many people have ever heard stress kills? And everybody raises their hand. And I'm like, wait a minute. You all told me that you never, most of you, that you've never had a mental disorder, a mental health disorder. But you told me that you've been stressed at some point in your life. I said, how many of you ever have been so sad you just broke down and cried and you were just hurt? That's a disorder. That's when your peace and your balance is out of order. And I think if we can break it down, Joan, for people to understand that, the reality is this. All of our peace and our balance breaks down. All of us go through situations or circumstances. For some of us, those situations or circumstances can be a trauma that becomes very difficult to deal with and address. And that trauma can transfer from a trauma to a full-fledged mental illness because it's not being properly addressed. I talk with people all the time who are still holding on to the trauma of losing a loved one. And depending upon how they lost that loved one, when you talk about people who've lost that loved one in a very painful, unexpected way, perhaps through violent crime, or you understand what I'm saying, or even an accident or something like that, people can carry that trauma, and that trauma can impact their health for the rest of their life and can turn into a mental illness. Yep. That was something that they had nothing to do with. You understand what I'm saying? That's not something that they did wrong. It's something that occurred just like physical illness occurs, right? I want people to understand, as it relates to mental illness, we have to learn how to look at it in the same way we look at physical illness. It can occur, this whole thing about people being crazy. I don't like to use that term because the reality is if we use it, we got to use it on all of us.
Right.
And not just one. All of us have the potential to have serious mental health challenges, depending upon the situations and the circumstances and the biological and the social and the geographical context that we live in. That depends a lot on how we're able to handle it. So people who come from backgrounds that have a lot more stress and a lot more trial, you're going to see a lot more mental health challenges, right? That makes sense because they're fighting an uphill battle. Guess what, Joan? Sometimes people who come from phenomenal backgrounds, right? We hear about people committing suicide who are millionaires,
right?
Who are stars, who are athletes. I don't want people to become confused and just think that because you have a mental health problem, that means it has something to do with your family or your background or your this or your that. Mental health challenges impact everyone. They just impact people differently.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how to get rid of this stigma and this shame that prevents people who have very preventable challenges that turn into mental illness because of how they're afraid to be received by the people that they love, or the people that they're employed by, or the people that they go to church with, or the people that they ride the bus with, or carpool with, or live with. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. So what are some resources that are available for people who are facing mental health challenges?
So for anyone facing mental health challenges, I always suggest that you look, depending upon your geographic location, you look for, number one, if it's a serious issue, if you don't feel safe, there are a lot of, there are numbers you can call. There are services that you can receive in every community. And so I would always encourage people, for folk who are dealing with depression, you know, there's a national suicide hotline, right? You can go online, you can find a hotline today, Joan, for almost everything. You know, today we live in a world where you can actually get mental health counseling on your computer. You can get mental health support via text message. And so what I want to say is that, you know, we can go online, we can find so many different resources. And I'm actually trying to look that I can actually give while we're here on this line, because why not now, right? Right where we are, right where we're doing, to look at, you know, what are some of those resources. So there's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That is a hotline. It's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. Though there are so many different lines. There's domestic violence hotlines, there's sex trafficking hotlines, there's hotlines for veterans, there's hotlines for people who are homeless. There's so many things that we can do right now. I always tell people, Joan, that we don't have an excuse anymore for not being able to help people. You should never find yourself in a setting, and I hope that everyone hears me. You should never find yourself in a setting where somebody needs help and you feel like you can't help them. Because one of the things that 99.99% of people on the earth have is a cell phone. I don't care whether it's a smartphone or a dumb phone. People have a cell phone.
Yes.
So I tell people at the least that you should put in your phone telephone numbers that you can pull up. If you don't know how to do anything else to help a person, here's some real practical stuff. Put in your telephone numbers, emergency contact numbers. You've heard of the term ICE in terms of our phones in case of emergency. That's a whole section that you can put in your cell phone, because if you started out with ICE and you meet somebody that has an emergency, if you just put in ICE, then it'll give you all in alphabetical order. So everybody should have a list of ICE contacts groups in their phones that has that National Domestic Violence, National Suicide Prevention, National Sex Trafficking, National Hotline for Veterans. You understand what I'm saying? And we can add on to it. They got autism, they got all kinds of things.
Wow.
Homelessness, that I encourage people to put in your phone. That's the very first thing. Another thing that we can do, you asked the question, if we're going to be very intentional about meeting the needs of other people, why do we not? I tell people, on the back of bathroom stalls, we should also list emergency numbers. Because if you're dealing with a person who's dealing with sex trafficking or domestic violence or any of those things, where's the one place they can't go? Where's the one place that they cannot go with you? In the bathroom, if you can help it, right? And so I suggest that we put behind all of our bathroom stalls those emergency contact numbers. There are so many ways now that we can look to try to be of assistance to people. And it's just a matter of us getting together and saying, this is what we're going to do. It always blesses me when I go into churches and I see those, because it's something that I always suggest to people. And I tell them, in your employee, you never know when people are struggling. One of the things that we can do is put that information. People, like I said, they can text people, they can get, they don't have to worry about their privacy. Find the information. Let's make the information available to people.
Awesome. So speaking of that, what are some of the ways that one can improve their mental health?
So there's many ways, and some of the very first practical ways that we need to do to make sure we improve our mental health is look at the way we're eating. Did you hear what I just said?
Yep.
People don't realize eating, what you put in your mouth, can impact your mental health. Also, your rest. How much sleep are you getting?
Right.
How much exercise are you doing? Do you have a support system? Do you go to church? Do you have people you can talk to, counselors you can talk to, but not even just counselors? Do you have friends? Do you have a support system that can help you when you're going through? Those are all ways that we can address our mental health. Now, one of the biggest ways that we can address our mental health, Joan, is to talk to our doctors.
Okay.
One of the other things that I always talk to people about, again, in my classes, is I say, when you go for your physical, a lot of times the only thing you're looking at the doctor to look at is your physical health. And if you're not careful, the doctor's not going to ask you about your mental health. But you know what, Joan? Every doctor is supposed to ask you about your mental health. When you get a physical, every single solitary doctor is supposed to ask you questions about your mental health. I know a lot of doctors don't, and we need to set our own physicians on notice because they work for us, right?
I don't recall mine asking me that. So when I go to my annual checkup next month, I think I'm gonna see if they will ask me anything in
And if
that
they
regard.
don't, you need to write. You need to
Oh,
say,
I
you
will.
haven't asked me, right, about my mental health. So what are some of the questions the doctors will ask you? They'll ask you, how are you sleeping?
Mhm.
They'll ask you, how are you thinking? You know, what are you thinking about? Do you see yourself as happy or sad? You know, they should be asking you all of those kinds of questions, because what we find a lot of times, Joan, is that people are going to the doctors and they're going to the doctors and talking about physical complications that are a direct result of mental challenges.
Okay.
Remember, we had that conversation a few minutes ago about stress kills?
Yes.
Stress gives us heart attacks. Stress gives us pain in our bodies. Stress causes our blood pressure to go up. Stress causes people to have strokes. Stress causes people to have all kinds of pains. And they go to the doctor about the pain. And if you're not careful, the doctor doesn't stop and say, wait a minute, what's going on in your life? And especially when you go and you have repeated pain. And I can tell you this from my own personal experience. I went to a doctor for 18 months, my primary care physician. I don't have to tell you he's not anymore. I went to my primary care physician for 18 months complaining of a problem. And it was starting, and I literally was starting to get depressed. I literally, because I'm saying, I am having these symptoms, I am having this pain, and we can't seem to, and then he kept nothing. And finally, and this is just because my faith tradition, I believe that the Lord himself spoke to me, had me to go online. I put all of my symptoms in a computer, and a diagnosis came up on the computer. I called my doctor. I said, listen, I need you to test me for such and such and such. He brought me in and tested me, and Joan, it came back positive.
Oh, wow.
And I became very upset. I said, wait a minute, you've been seeing me for 18 months. And unless you thought something was wrong with me mentally, why did you not take all of the tests necessary? It was a simple blood test.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
And I say that, and I say this to people, we have to learn how to advocate for ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a simple blood test that they could have done long before they did, right? To finally diagnose what was going on with me.
Right. But let me ask you this. So when someone goes to the doctor and say that it's a doctor that go through this process, you know, checking out their mental health status, what happened with that information once it's collected? Do they have a duty to report? Do they have, what is their legal obligation at that point?
So the only thing that a doctor can ever report, or anyone else for that matter, is if you are a danger to yourself or others. They
Okay.
can never report anything else. There is something called HIPAA laws.
Mhm.
They can never report anything else about your personal health care, just like they can about your physical health care. Your doctor legally can't tell you, your job can't ask your doctor what's wrong with you. That's against the law.
Right. So they would just have to relay those information to the patient and let them take it from there.
So,
However,
right, what the doctor's next job is, if the doctor asks you some questions, and there are screenings that doctors can do, there are screenings you can do, Joan. There are actually screenings you can get online that you can help with a person who may feel like they're going through some things.
Mhm.
And when those screenings come back, you'll test the screening, you'll follow the information. Then you say to the person, okay, based on this information, you know, it's what I use. Based on this information, I think you should it's time for you to go see somebody else. So the doctor, you know, is a general practitioner. They're not a counselor. They're not a psychologist. They're not a psychiatrist. Now, a lot of people's primary care physicians, Joan, prescribe psychotropic medication. And I say this to each his own, but my thing is, if that's not the doctor's specialty, then
Right.
I would ask to be referred to a psychiatrist.
Exactly.
Right? You know, if your doctor's not an oncologist, he shouldn't be treating your cancer. Right?
Exactly.
So there are specialists. If your doctor is not a dentist, he's not pulling your teeth,
Exactly.
right? So it's the same thing. When you go to your primary care physician, he should be able to refer you out to someone who can help you. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to feel like something's wrong with you. If you don't feel like something's wrong with you because you have a toothache or you have a cold, right, then you shouldn't feel like something's wrong with you because you're having mental health challenges. Because again, it all comes together, okay? A lot of people can have a physical illness that can lead to mental health challenges, right?
Right.
In the same way that I just said, you can be dealing with stressors that lead to physical challenges. And so we need to look at them as one and the same. We need to stop stigmatizing them and making people feel guilty because they don't feel well.
Right.
If you don't feel well, you don't feel well.
Well.
And you got to get help. It's like anything else. If you let it go, then anything can happen, right? And the worst scenario is that you completely ignore it, it can go away. But going away may mean your life's going away.
Exactly. So
Right?
what are the most frequent mental health problems in young adults, in youth?
So a lot of things that we see happening with young adults right now, we see, Jonah, and it's so disappointing to say, but we have had a 116% increase in suicides. 116%. I believe it's since 2014.
Oh, so
we see depression. We see depression in young people in ways that we've never imagined. And it always hurts me because I hear people say, well, I don't know why they're depressed because they have this, that, or the other thing. And I said, but you know what? Here's the piece, Joan. Our young people today are exposed to stuff that we never had to deal with. They have to try to navigate and journey their way to understand stuff that we just never had to deal with. I tell people, Joan, and you talked about dating yourself, but I tell people when I was coming up, Joan, at 10 o'clock at night, you know what my TV said? Dun, 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 dun. You understand what I'm saying? And after you heard that, then you heard shh. TV, there was nothing else playing. There was nothing else playing. When I came up, Ozzy and Harriet were husband and wife, and they slept in separate beds with a nightstand in between them on TV. You never saw them kiss. You understand what I'm saying? Now the stuff our young people see, the stuff that they're exposed to, you never heard foul language on TV. You never heard presidents calling people idiots. And can we just be honest?
Right.
Can we just call it like it is?
Yay.
The things that our young people see and are exposed to today, they have so much more to navigate than we had to navigate.
That's true.
We did things differently. We had to learn different skills. People don't take into consideration all of these things impact our young people. And we can't talk about our young people when we created a lot of the scenarios.
That's true.
That they're dealing with, right? When I grew up, you went outside and played. You didn't have the option of dealing with video games that dealt with violence and stuff that, Joan, I'm still flabbergasted at some of the things that our young people see on video games, that they actually put out video games that show people how to kill people and how to rape people and they call it fun. Yeah. They call it just a game. I saw a video game not too long ago where they were doing something where they were killing babies. And in the bottom of it, it said, I know this looks like, it's not, but it's just a game. Really? It's just a game. And then you wonder why people take on some of these ideas. We see so many dark behaviors now and dark mindsets, and we wonder where they come from. They come from us. They come from people who are creating these things in the name of entertainment. And so can you imagine a person who's already struggling in some areas of their lives?
Yeah, that's just crazy.
It's
just crazy.
Is that word?
So, even the good book tell us that, people perish for lack of knowledge. So if you don't know, you just don't know. And not everybody is the female version of Curious George like myself that just go out there and just educate myself on things, whether it relate to me or not. I'll just like to learn
And
about
that's
those things.
powerful. And that's why
So,
people need you and the Jones show. Seriously, because if you don't get it, you don't get it. And that's a reality. If
that's
you
true.
don't get it, and unfortunately, we live in a world where people don't get it because guess what? Folk don't do anymore. They don't read.
Oh, no.
They don't read. Folk don't read. They don't look in books anymore. And we have to. So if they're not going to read, then we're going to have to be the book that they read. We have to be that mouthpiece that gives them the education, you know, that allows them to know that there are resources out there that you can use and utilize.
Absolutely. So as a first aid mental health trainer, what are some of the topics that you cover? What are some of the areas that you cover in your training?
So we talk about how do you assess and address a person who may be encountering a mental health in either entering into a mental health crisis or in a full-fledged crisis. Now we use a mnemonic device called ALGIE.
Okay.
And ALGIE is actually our little stuffed koala. It's not a bear. Everybody, koalas are not bears. They're marsupials. They're marsupials and they have pouches. I have to say this all the time. It's hilarious because they say koala bear and I'm like, no, it's not a marsupial. I mean, it's not a bear, it's a marsupial. But anyway, our what's the word I'm trying to use?
ALGIE?
Mascot
Oh, mascot.
is a koala, and we call the koala ALGIE.
Okay.
And ALGIE is a synonym that we use to talk about how we help people. And so it stands, the A in ALGIE says that you want to assess for the risk of suicide or harm. And then the L in ALGIE stands for listen non-judgmentally to see what the person is dealing with, non-judgmentally. The G in ALGIE stands for give reassurance and information. The E in ALGIE stands for, how can I forget what E? Oh, Lord. I can tell you what it is. You have to encourage professional
help if needed.
Correct. Encourage professional help. And then the second E stands for encourage personal help. So they have to take personal responsibility also.
You see, it's a good thing I did my homework, right?
Woo! I can't believe it was the E to encourage. I knew what I wanted to say. Professional help.
I told you, I always make sure I have good information so that, in moments like this. So
yes.
Just to expand on this, just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
When the A that stands for assess for risk of harm or suicide, what does that look like? What do they do?
So when you're assessing for risk of suicide or harm, that's a big question that we ask people, because when I tell people, how do you ask a person, if you're concerned that the person wants to kill themselves, and they'll say, I ask them, do you want to harm yourself? I said, no, we got to get away from using that word. Do you want to hurt? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? No. We want you to be very specific. When we're talking about life or death, when we talk about assessing for risk of suicide or harm, you need to say to that person, do you want to die?
Yeah.
Are you trying to die? Are you trying to kill yourself? This is not the time for being politically or anything else correct. So when we talk about assessing for risk of suicide or harm, we want to ask the serious questions. Are you trying to die? Do you want to continue to live? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Use those words. It is a myth that you put those thoughts in the mind of a person if you ask them those questions.
Right.
So when we talk about assessing for risk of suicide or harm, we want to ask those serious questions. We want to get a serious answer. If the person says no, then you can go to other means. But if the person says yes, then the next thing that you have to do, and I use this term MAP. It's a term some people will use, and I actually use it even in my training. It's not in our curriculum, but I talk about it because it's the easiest way to understand. When we talk about a map, we think about something giving us direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk to a person and you ask them, are you thinking about killing yourself? If that person says yes, then I tell people you immediately go to the map. What does the map say? The first thing, the M in map, is you need to know if that person has the means to kill themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So you want to know if they have the means. If they have the means, do they have access? That's the A in map. So if they have the means, do they have access to it? So somebody has a gun, do they have access to that gun?
Right.
Right. The means, the access, and then the third thing we ask is a plan. So MAP, M-A-P. Do they have means and access? And they have means and access. Now you want to know if they have a plan. And you use that determining factor to decide what's the next step. if they have a map, the map again is a direction. If they have that means, access, and plan, now it's time for you to say, I can't try to help this person anymore. I have to get this person to a professional because what? They are a danger to themselves.
Wow.
And so now all bets are off. You know, we keep no secrets. There's no such thing as keeping a person's secret. I can't re-emphasize this enough. Who's considering taking their life.
Mhm.
There's no such thing. And people will say, please don't tell anybody. No, this is the time, especially when they have a plan.
Yes.
Okay, when they have that map, means, access plan, this is the time that you have to get on the phone and call for help. Now, people ask me sometimes, June, well, what does that mean? Who do I call? Do I call the police? And I say, listen, you have to be very careful about who you call. Preferably you call someone that has access to psychiatric crisis help, okay? Because sometimes when you call the police, you can't be angry when they come and they react in a manner that might cause harm instead of helping someone, preventing someone from harming themselves. Because if they don't understand, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Then their job is to protect. And guess what? Contrary to popular belief, the police officer's job, yes, they're there to protect the public, but guess who they got to protect first? They got to protect themselves.
Oh.
Right? Because they can't help anybody else. And so people, when you think, oh, they're here to protect us, they can't protect you if they don't feel like they're protected
Right.
first. And people don't think about that. So when you reach out for help, again, that's why I'm saying to everybody, please get it, just put it in your phone. Put those numbers in your phone, those crisis numbers in your phone, so that if you meet somebody who's having a challenge, you can look at the crisis number instead of calling the wrong person. Sometimes if you call just an ambulance, guess what? EMTs are not trained in mental health. So guess who they call? The police. That's just the reality. That is just the reality. And those are things that we want to change. I tell people one of my dreams, Joan, is that we get to a place where when when you call 911, most of the time when you call 911, they'll ask you, do you need a police, the fire department, or an ambulance? You know what I want to see happen? I want people that if you talk about just an ambulance, because when we think about an ambulance, we're only thinking about a physical illness. So there has to be a number 4. And we have to figure out how that number 4 is incorporated. Is it incorporated through the ambulance, the police, or the fire department? There has to be, I need someone who's trained to deal with mental health crises.
Yeah.
That's the number 4. That's a part of the health. It's the part of the health that we leave out. And it's the part of the health that has caused so many people to lose their lives. Amen. Because people didn't know how to address them, lose their lives, not because just they got shot. But listen, people, there is no difference in the symptoms between a panic attack and a heart attack. But most people don't know that. And so I actually know of a woman who herself thought she was having a panic attack because she suffered from panic attacks.
Oh.
But she was having a heart attack, Joan, and she died. And she died because she told them, oh, I'm having a panic attack. And so I always tell people, you always rule out medical when you're dealing with a challenge. We have to learn this. Once again, if you don't know, you don't know. That woman died because even she thought she was having a panic attack. And so I want people to know how to, understand what I'm saying? You got to rule out the medical, but always be prepared to seek help for what could be a mental health challenge.
Right, absolutely. So I have this printout here with the prevalence of mental health issues. And just so for my viewers, let me just go over some of them and their percentages. Anxiety disorder, 18%.
That's almost one in every, that's almost one in every 20. I mean, so 18% is almost 20%.
Right.
That's 1 in 5 people. Think about that. That's almost 1 in 5 people who are dealing with an anxiety attack. That's annually. Okay.
Yep. And then it has major depressive disorder, which is at 6.8%. Then substance use disorder, which is 8%. Bipolar, 2.8. And that's the one that shocked me because I just thought that number would have been bigger.
I told you most people.
When I took the course, I'm like,
Yeah. Most people will tell you bipolar. Oh, they're bipolar. That is not high on the mental health spectrum.
But check out this is a kicker. Eating disorder, 5 to 10%. How did bipolar is much smaller than eating disorder?
Because we're in denial. Because
Right.
people are in denial. Really.
And then schizophrenia is only 3.07%. Yeah, so this anxiety disorder, that's like that's a big one at 18%.
Yes, almost one. Can you believe that? That's almost 1 in 5 people.
Yes.
Who are dealing with, you count, you go to your church, you go to your job, you count one, start counting. If you got more than 5 people in the room, somebody,
Yes.
99.9% of the chance in that group is dealing with some type of a mental health challenge.
Right. So before we close out, Jamila, because I know there are folks watching even live or will be listening to the replay. If they know, if it is they themselves or somebody that they might know, what's the encouragement would you have to leave with these folks that they could either take for themselves or take it to a family member, a friend, a coworker? What is that one thing that you would leave with them tonight?
So the one thing I would leave with people tonight is not to feel bad or ashamed if you or a loved one is dealing with something that is causing you to deal with depression, to causing you to have anxiety, if you're dealing with some fears that you don't understand, because there are a lot of fears that people deal with that they don't understand. They have social phobias. They're afraid of being around people or places or things, and that you shouldn't feel bad about feeling bad. Let me say that again. You should not feel bad about feeling bad, but what you should do is always look to find out what resources are available. My business is called Gabriel's Lyric Therapeutic Services. My website is www.gltsllc.org. Again, it's www.gltsllc.org. You give us a call, reach out to us. You don't have to be in my neighborhood. I'm not telling you I'm going to charge you, but if you are dealing with a mental health challenge, or you have a loved one who's dealing with a challenge and you don't know what to do, give us a call. I get people call me, Joan, from all over the US, and I just direct them to somebody in the state that they live in. So
is there a particular number for them to call?
Our telephone number is 240-305-9679. That's 240-305-9679. That's the business number.
Okay, and you could also type that information in the feed once you're done.
Okay.
And, but see, that will only be good for like the Facebook users, because all this video will be moved over to the YouTube channel. So
right, so on YouTube, they can reach out to us by phone or reach out to us by website.
Okay, awesome. So it's been great talking with you tonight. So I know that you've been, hosting or even attending various events. Do you have any upcoming events that you want to?
I have a number of upcoming events. And again, I want to encourage people to go to our website. We do mental health first aid certification trainings every month of every year. So we have this Saturday, for those who are in the DMV, we have a youth mental health first aid certification training coming up. On the 15th, we have an adult mental health first aid certification training. On the 22nd, we have an adult mental health first aid certification training. We have one scheduled so far in March, on March 28th, an adult mental health first aid certification. Go to our website. We have a lot of things, but listen, everybody, I don't care where you are, where you're coming from. September 26th, and Joan, I need you in there.
Okay.
September 26th is our 5th annual Faith and Mental Health Conference. September the 26th is going to be 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to have that information on the website really shortly, where you'll have the registration information, hotel information, anything that you need. I promise you. Listen, I'm gonna be real bold, Joan. This is a money back guarantee. If you don't come to that conference and learn something that will just heavily impact your life, I'll give you your money back.
Okay.
But I tell you, we bring some of the best to come and talk to people and just give you very practical ways of how we address mental health challenges, how we help our family members, our loved ones, our job situations, in our churches. We talk about a lot of things that we can do to help to elevate and make our lives better as a people. That's a big event coming up this September the 26th. It's going to be at a church called Tree of Life Christian Ministries in Clinton, Maryland. Again, we are expecting no less than 500 people. And we'll have so many different types of providers there, so many different types of services there. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be awesome. But go to our website, www.gltsllc.org, www.gltsllc.org for more information. Feel free to call us, reach out to us, and you'll hear back from us.
Awesome. So again, I want to thank you for being my very special guest tonight with all this wealth of information that you've shared, and I'm sure I will be sharing. So if you're watching, or if you're gonna be watching the replay, please share this great information with your network. Okay, this is how we're gonna be able to spread this information so that we can help others who desperately need this kind of support.
Yes.
Again, I'm gonna invite you to go to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and it's just simply Influential Thursday. And subscribe so that I could build that number up. And so to close out, I'm going to close with the very thing that I started with. It is tonight influential quote, and it says, "Don't let your struggle become your identity." Again, don't let your struggle become your identity. I have been your host, Jamaican Joan. I thank you so much for tuning in to Influential Thursday. Join me next week, same time, same platform. But until then, you take care and make this $1 million day. Jamaican Joan out.